Can y'all hear that? Can you hear that music, or am I just dancing to silence? 1 second. All right, y'all couldn't hear the music? That's too bad. I have it on my phone, so I'll play it for you in a minute. Um, Hello, everybody. So can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me now. All right. Yeah, no, I've been playing AC/DC. I've been playing that AC/DC Back in Black song, like a lot since we got the news yesterday about Manson, because it's such a perfect song, and that's why I'm putting it as the background music in all of my or most of my Instagram posts. Okay, so the big news is, and a lot of you have heard this, that Manson is going on tour with, and I keep messing up their name, Five Finger Punch. Wait, what? Somebody put it in the comments. I have no understanding or scope of metal music at all. It's just not my genre. Five Finger Death Punch. Thank you. I love how the names of these bands are so aggressive. Five Finger Death Punch and also Slaughter to Prevail, who will be opening for Manson apparently. Slaughter to Prevail. That should be like the theme for the Colonel Kurtz channel. I feel like, honestly. If you know Apocalypse Now, then you know the significance of that. Yes, I'm wearing these shades again, but I'm going to take them off in a moment. Some people yesterday did not get the reference here, and so I got a text from one of my mods, AJ, saying nice shades, which I appreciate. But then I sent him a picture of Evan Rachel Wood with the heart-shaped glasses on, and he was like, "Oh, so yeah, so this is just a bit of homage." Well, either to that, or we could just say to Marilyn Manson's great song and just forget about her. But yeah, there has been a lot of media attention on this since it came out, since it was announced yesterday that Manson would be touring for the first time since 2019, and certainly since he got canceled. And so you had some really aggressive articles like the article in Metal Sucks, which called him, they did have the decency to put the word accused in there at least, but their first line was uh something like, it looks like this accused rapist and all around dirtbag is trying to get his career back. I don't know. I'll find the article a little bit later. And of course, Rolling Stone did what is expected of them, and they never surprise me these days. But I did think it was interesting or funny that Rolling Stone included a dig at Manson, a financial dig from Ashley Walters' attorney. So in the Rolling Stone article, Ashley Walters' attorney said, well, he's clearly doing it because he needs the money dealing with all of these legal cases. Yeah, no, duh, Sherlock, because all of you lawyers and these crazy women that you were latching onto and frankly exploiting, and I'm talking to you, especially Jeff Anderson, but also the others, including my now ex-boyfriend, unfortunately, Jay Elwanger. Yeah, we did break up, but I'm still holding out a little hope that after all this Manson stuff is over, we can get back together. But um, all of these lawyers who are encouraging these women, and I'm not saying they need encouragement, because clearly there's a number of crazy slash manipulative women who are bound and determined to get whatever bit of money they can out of Manson or out of his insurance company that's paying, I would imagine, paying his settlements. But these lawyers are just clearly using these women for whatever they can gain in terms of an easy check, or in Jeff Anderson's case, also notoriety, because he's trying to position himself as some kind of a savior of the music industry. And I have videos on my Instagram. We might look at one of them in a minute. Well, let's look at one of them now, actually. So I know we're going afields of the Manson thing, but I talked about the going afields of the tour news. I'm going to come back to that. I did talk about it in my last live stream yesterday, where you can see how I reacted, but I'm going to come back to it. But these lawyers are just ridiculous. And I bring this up because you had Ashley Walters' lawyer who was quoted in Rolling Stone with that really snarky comment at Manson. Yeah, he needs money because of all the unjust things that all of you are doing to him. Okay, so here is Jeff Anderson, lawyer for one of the most ridiculous of the accusers. They're all ridiculous, but one of the most ridiculous, Bianca Kine Elaine, or whatever name she's going by. One second. I just want to show you a little bit of this, and then we'll come back. In a moment. Where is it? Okay. Now, Jeff Anderson, he made a lot of money suing the Catholic Church, which I probably have no issue with that. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, but I think, we've heard and seen enough of the Catholic Church, the negative activities that have been going on there confirmed. But Jeff Anderson is going after multiple people in the music industry, and I'm not saying that they're all innocent, but he knows what he is doing, and he's exploiting these women. So he's been putting out these really ridiculous promo speeches, and here is one of them. Oops.
About the music. And you do care about the people. You better get in this space. And you better do something like what these survivors have had the courage to do.
We're going to talk to you about the most urgent thing that is on our mind, and what we suspect is the most urgent thing on the minds of those who will connect with us.
If you do care.
That's what he reminds me of, honestly. That's what he reminds me of, Marshall Applewhite, the Heaven's Gate cult guy. But he's a terrible communicator. Could you hear that crackle too? That wasn't my audio. This guy, and he's done it twice now, because I noticed that he did another press conference again with some of these supposed victims and a number of activists. He did another press conference, and it had that same crackle. You can go to his YouTube and you can hear it. It's got the same crackle on it. So couldn't even get the audio right for, this big presser that he was doing. But anyway, my point is, these lawyers with all their snarky comments, they have absolutely no credibility in my mind or in anyone else's. And so they can keep it up, and they can keep giving their snarky remarks to Rolling Stone, and Ashley Walters' attorney can keep planting these snarky remarks in Rolling Stone articles. But you have, sir, a ridiculous client, and she will continue to be ridiculous. She is the one, remember, who said that she could not remember. She had repressed all of this supposed abuse that occurred when she was employed by Manson in her 20s, not as a child, not as a teenager. So all of these things, and they suddenly came back to her when Evan Rachel Wood started talking about it, and when she went into therapy to try to dig more deeply into what was troubling her. And so now we have this lawsuit, ridiculous lawsuit, revived again. So anyway, but despite the bad press that's coming Manson's way, and that's directed at this tour, and that I'm sure will continue to be directed at the tour, I don't know. I have to say, I don't think it's making an impact. I noticed that Evan Rachel Wood has not said anything. And to be honest with you, I thought that she would really clap back. I really did. I thought by now we would have gotten some kind of a big statement from her, if nothing else on Instagram. And again, demanding that the DA be called, and the LASD and, Los Angeles authorities, call them and complain about what's being done about Brian Warner. What is being done about Brian Warner? But there's been nothing like that. And I just continue to think that at a certain point, unless Evan Rachel Wood is just totally crazy, which she may be, and she's certainly given us indications of that, but unless she is just totally nuts, she has to see that there's just no more runway for the shit that she's trying to pull, in terms of there's not going to be any more positive attention. Like that is really, like, we are done with all the positive attention that she's going to get from this. And so I think that I don't know. I think that I was thinking a while back that if Manson toured, and frankly, let me just admit here, and this is a case where I can say I was definitely wrong in my predictions, because let me just say, by the way, I did not think that Manson would be able to tour at this point in any capacity, even as a supporting act. And so, like, back in the summer, for instance, when I was really down about this case, and for a while, like, I thought that in the political climate we're in, and not just the political climate, but the really scared bureaucratic corporate climate that really runs the show with this stuff, right? When we're talking about getting people insured to go on stage, as you all know, like, you have to be insured. You have to find a company that will insure you and your act when you go on stage. And generally speaking, when people have a lot of problematic histories in terms of, well, what Manson is accused of or other things, often it's drugs as well, they can't get insured. And, like, I remember, for instance, Robert Downey Jr., when Robert Downey Jr. was going through his rough time with drugs, and he even did some time, like, in prison or whatever. When he got out, maybe it was when he got out or before he went, but at any rate, Mel Gibson actually had to step in at one point and insure him for an acting job. Nobody else would hire Robert Downey Jr. because of the drug thing. And he wanted to be on Ally McBeal, I think it was. They were gonna give him a chance, and it was seen as like a really, like a last chance for him, right? That the industry was giving him this chance. But apparently Mel Gibson had to pay for him to be insured. And so my point being that also I thought that there would be a great political reluctance on the part of these companies, these venues, insurance agencies, whatever, whoever's the bureaucracy that's allowing this stuff to happen. I thought that there would be a much greater political reticence, in the sense of them thinking, well, we don't want to give off this impression, or we don't want people to hear or to find out that we were collaborating with this guy who's accused of these terrible things. But apparently, Manson and his team have found a way around that bias that I expected. So I really thought that he was not going to be able to tour in any capacity except just something, very small or laughable, which this clearly is not. I thought that he wouldn't be able to do that. I thought nobody would insure him. I thought venues would be scared, wouldn't want him, would be scared of protests or whatever. And so I just have to say, because I did have a lot of criticism for Manson's team, whoever they are, right? And it's not even clear, as Rolling Stone said, it's not even clear who did these bookings with Five Finger Death Punch. It's not clear who did these bookings, but whoever is managing him, and I really don't know if it's Tony is back or if someone else or whatever. But I have to say that whoever's handling that, I am impressed. If you're listening, I am impressed. After I know I've talked shit about you, but I'm impressed that you were able to get this done. So I'll say that. And I was wrong about it. I was too negative about it. I didn't even think we'd be here. Now, I also think that it's been interesting, and I've talked about this before, but it's been interesting to see how much society seems to have quickly shifted on things. And I'm not saying that everybody has come around, and certainly the mainstream media, they have not come around. And certainly there are a lot of people in the public and in the music industry who don't really know what to think about the Manson stuff. It's just kind of like a toxic cloud, when they look at it. But I really do get the sense that people are weary of these MeToo hit jobs. They know that we cannot live by or abide by the believe women or believe all women mantra. I think that they've seen enough false accusations to know that these things are complicated, and especially when you're dealing with a celebrity and someone who is a lightning rod for negative attention, as Marilyn Manson has been, that you can't necessarily rely on the word of exes or even a number of women. As we know, Evan Rachel Wood recruited, although a number of them have fallen off, right? So again, every time this subject of how many women have accused Manson comes up, I have to remind people, well, wait a minute, a number of those have fallen off, and not only fallen off, but in the case of Ashley Morgan Smithline, actually said, no, this was a hoax and it was lies and I take it back in a legal sworn court declaration, right? But a number of these accusers have fallen off. A number of them have been exposed. And I mean, I think they all have been exposed if you really look into it. But a number of them have been exposed in various ways and discredited. And so we're not dealing with that many accusations anymore. And also, I noticed that people who criticize Manson and some of the big accounts that are anti-Manson, they love to bring up the fact that men have also accused Marilyn Manson. I think that they think that is in a way, kind of a real trump card or a real plus to say, look, it's not just a gaggle of crazy women who've gotten themselves all whipped up into this, dumb conspiracy, which it is, for attention, what have you. But look, it's also these guys. It's guys who it's ex-assistants, it's former band members, etc. To which I would reply, first of all, we're still not talking about that many guys. And when you actually get down to what these people claim that they witnessed versus what people assume by their words they witnessed, it's a very different thing. And I've talked about him before, but like Dan Cleary is a perfect example because, and this is Dan Cleary, briefly a former assistant of Manson, mostly, as I understand it, his keyboard or his guitar tech for a while, but then was for a brief period, was a personal assistant. And, Dan Cleary came out with that big tweet, and you see it in part 2 of Phoenix Rising, if you watch that ridiculous documentary. But Dan Cleary came out with that big tweet. And sorry, I see all super chats, by the way. I'm going to get to them in just a minute. Just want to run through this intro. Dan Cleary came out with that big tweet where he said everything they're saying is true. And I was around Manson when he and Evan were together, and you could see, how different she was by the end of that period, and how dark, and et cetera, which sounds bad, right? And so there were all of these headlines saying, "Oh, Manson ex-assistant confirms Evan Rachel Wood's story," et cetera. But then, as I've said before, when you actually watch Dan Cleary's podcast, where he did an episode at the time on this topic, he admits that he never saw any abuse of Evan Rachel Wood. He never saw any abuse. What he said is that her aura changed over that period. That's literally all he says about Evan Rachel Wood. And he doesn't claim to have seen abuse of any of these other women. There's one person, Manson's current wife, that he claims to have seen some, what he describes as emotional abuse. I would say at times obvious joking. Like when he says that Manson told him that he was going to cut her up and he's going to have to bury her in the desert or whatever. Like, really? That was, you thought that was real? Because it sounds like what I've heard is Manson's dark sense of humor. But, there's just no there with Cleary's accusations. And I am actually, look, I'll say this for Dan Cleary. I am in the minority of Manson supporters who I don't think that Dan Cleary is a bad person. I know a number of you will get mad, or not mad at me, but like a number of you will say, no, they take offense, and no, he's a piece of shit and whatever. And I know there are people who, who've been around him who think that. But I'm just saying, I talked to Dan Cleary for a while, and I'm not going to get into that conversation. I've alluded to it before, but I talked to Dan Cleary for a while, a long time ago on the phone. And my sense of him, honestly, is that he got suckered by these women. I think he probably, like a lot of people who've worked for Marilyn Manson, or a lot of people who work for movie stars or celebrities or anyone, there can be some tension and bad blood that develops between a boss and an underling. And what I see when I look, by the way, at Manson and the people who've come in and out of his life and the fallings out that he's had over the years and so forth, and I see it with a lot of other celebrities when you read into their bios, is that when you're a celebrity, basically all of your relationships are complicated by that dynamic. And so there's a kind of a cycle that I've observed where people will at first idealize or idolize someone, and then they get into that circle, and they're actually able to become friends with or employed by that person. And then there's a kind of a devaluation that occurs where suddenly they're resenting, everything about that person and so forth, because they can never get out of them exactly what they want, right? And so I think you take sort of the normal dynamic of an employee falling out with an employer, okay, and I'm sure there was other stuff going on and other dynamics complicating that relationship. And then you add to it all of these very seemingly believable, fragile women, and including Evan Rachel Wood, who everyone assumes, or or a lot of people, at least up until recently, was just this real sweetheart, and this great chick, this great gal. And so you have these women who begin a campaign to get people like Dan Cleary to believe them. And so my impression, I'll just tell you, and then I'm gonna move on from this, but my impression was that he got really suckered by these women, and he also had some issues, personal issues or whatever, with Manson, so that emphasizes it. But I have the impression that when he was at the filming of Phoenix Rising, and you remember what you saw on camera, all of those women were crying at various points, and they were talking passionately about the things that they said that Manson did to them, including Ashley Morgan Smithline, who later recanted and said it was all a hoax, right? So, they were crying. Apparently they had to, some of them, made a big deal of like having to step outside because they were too emotional or whatever. And you're a guy, you're, no offense, a dumb guy. I don't mean dumb like Dan Cleary specifically is dumb. I mean the way that men can be dumb about women at times and their manipulations. And you're sitting there and you're seeing all of this like outburst of emotion and all this, oh, and he cut me, he locked me up or whatever, and all these things that we know have been disproved. I just think that probably it's very, very easy to get taken in by that. So I really don't think that Dan Cleary is a bad guy, and I might be wrong about that, but I don't think that. And I still have some hope that he's going to come around on this thing, and he's going to realize at some point that he's been suckered. But anyway, maybe not. Who knows? Okay, I'm gonna look at the super chats, and then I'm gonna get back to talking about Manson stuff. Wait, where are we? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go way back. Dan Campbell, thank you so much as always for your support. You said, I badly wish I were interested or knowledgeable about this, but I'm just here to support Kurtz. Well, thank you. And who else? Who do we have? I'm trying to skim through your comments too. I get a lot of it just when I skim them. I still pick up a lot of what you're saying. I learned to be a fast reader in grad school, though. We had to read a novel a day, basically, at one point. So I got really good at skimming. Andrew Jacobs, thank you. You said Saul Manson at the Forum 1999 when he fell off stage. Oh, there are a lot of interesting Manson stories about performances, both good and bad. I mean, I think Manson would probably be the first to admit that when he was going through his, less sober periods, let's put it, that he had some interesting performances, some doozies of performances. But also I've seen video of him, just giving an amazing, amazing performance. And so I think that's what you're going to get, particularly now that he's completely sober. I think that you're going to get, and I hear he's leveled up in his game, leveled up in his musical game. I mean, in his life game too, I guess, but all around leveled up. I think that people who go to this concert, go to the concerts that are coming out this summer, I think that they're going to get really amazing performances out of him. I really believe that. And I have to think that there's going to be a part of Manson that when he gets back on stage again, he's going to be very grateful. I don't mean grateful in the sense that he doesn't deserve to be there, but I mean grateful in the sense that, when you lose something or when something's taken away from you, then it's only then that you really start to appreciate it. And so maybe that'll be on a personal level, or as a performer, maybe that will be something really, really powerful and for him and for the audience. Dan Campbell says Dan Cleary should have been more wary. It really is scary. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're talking about Dan Cleary should have been more wary, or I should have been talking to Dan Cleary. But I'll say this, whenever I talk to people, and it's been this way now for a while, I would say this was a realization that I came to, in the last year and a half or so, is that any conversation that I have, I just need to be prepared for it to be put out there publicly. And to his credit, he did not and has not done that. I have not done that. And so whatever. And so, but yeah, so I don't, I learned that lesson after a year or a year and a half. I should have learned it earlier. But anyways, I want to talk back to this idea though of Manson and being able to perform again for the first time and what that might mean on a personal level. I remember this anecdote from the lead singer of Garbage, Shirley Manson, actually, also last name, not related. And she was talking in this interview about how she was talking about boredom, and she was talking about the fact that boredom is a big problem for performers and that people don't realize that. And I think she was talking about the idea of addiction or something too. She was trying to explain, the idea of needing substances to get through performance. I'm not talking about her specifically. I don't even know if she has an addiction issue, but it was a larger conversation about addiction, performers, that sort of thing. But I remember that she was talking about boredom and how she, at the height of her fame and success, and when when that band was filling stadiums or playing to huge amphitheater stadiums, that she would go out on stage and it wouldn't even raise her blood pressure anymore. It wouldn't even raise her heartbeat. And she was using that as an example of the fact that no matter what you're doing, everything gets stale, everything gets old eventually. And one of the big struggles in life is in whatever you're doing, is to keep a kind of a fresh zeal, whether we're talking about relationships or we're talking about careers or commitments or what have you. And anyway, about Manson, I guess what I'm saying is that what I see when I see videos of some of those earlier performances where he was clearly not in a good place and was dysfunctional at times on stage or what have you, or sometimes, I guess, flat out disastrous occasionally. I see someone, among other things, who I think that the show had lost its luster, or the idea of performance had lost its luster and its appeal. And I see someone who, yeah, I know people say this, substances and all that, but I also see someone who seemed really bored. And so I think that, one of the gifts of this is that as he gets back on stage, and I think this will just be a beginning, and I don't know how much time it'll take, but I think that his career will expand again and so forth. But as he does that, I think that'll be one of the gifts that he will have from this experience, is that hopefully it will mean a lot more to him and he will be able to experience it in a fresh way. So I don't know. That could just be me, basically projecting my own feelings, because boredom is one of my biggest, I think, psychological issues, so to speak, the boredom issue. I have this persistent fantasy, and this is something that I think about from time to time, that I wish, because I love movies so much, and because in a lot of ways I feel like I've sort of lived my life more in the movies than in real life at times. Um, but I wish that I could wipe my brain free of memories of the movies that I've seen, of my favorite movies, kind of like an Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where after a breakup, they wipe away all memory of the person you were in love with. I wish that I could erase from my mind all memory of my favorite movies and then come up with a list of like 100 or 200, whatever, movies, and then just sit somewhere for a year and re-experience them all again. Now, that may seem funny, but I actually like fantasize about that several times a week. I know it sounds strange, but like I really think like that would just be so great. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that except boredom. So yes, I am surprised that that Manson is able to tour, and I'm so happy for him. And I know that there are some people online and some of the anti-Manson accounts that are ragging him over the fact that he is a supporting act in this. So Slaughter to Prevail, I love that name. Slaughter to Prevail is opening, and then for Manson, and then Manson's opening for Five Finger Death Pact. I don't know why that name is just so hard for me to remember, but anyway. And so some people are ragging Manson online about the fact that he's an opener. Oh, look at this. This is such a career step back. One of the anti-Manson accounts, and I was making fun of this on Instagram, but actually had a diagram, and they had an arrow pointing to the headliner, and then an arrow pointing to Manson tagging along. Yeah. Okay. And then this account was asserting that the only reason that Manson was doing this show, was able to tour with Five Finger Death Punch, is because they took pity on him and they were allowing him to tag along. If you think that these kinds of decisions, these kinds of professional decisions and tour decisions are made on the basis of pity, then you are completely naive about the music industry and the entertainment industry. No, they didn't take pity on him. In fact, and I mean this, no offense to Five Finger Death Pact at all, but Manson is an icon. And this may be one of the first times, I'm serious, one of the first times in music history where you will see more people buying tickets to a show to see the opening act, to see Manson, than to see the actual band. And again, that's not knocking the main band. It's just they haven't been around as long. They haven't had that cultural status, et cetera, et cetera. People like me who are dumb about music, metal music. I don't know anything about it. Like I'd never heard of them, right? But my friend had, because he's really into that genre, right? And so I was like, "Have you heard of these guys?" He's like, "Oh my God, they're amazing. Their song Afterlife changed my life," or something. I don't know. But if you think that these people are bringing Manson along out of pity, no, 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 no. They understand that and they're so very shrewd and so courageous, fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold. Caution is good when needed and appropriate, but fortune favors the bold. And they have this band, Five Finger Death Pact, they have the bravery and the guts to apparently Live Nation, that's who's sponsoring it, right? They apparently do as well, to get through the mainstream media backlash and all of that whining and everything, and to keep going. And then to, I think, get a really great payoff at the end in terms of ticket sales and in terms of PR, because this is negative PR, but it's still PR and it's still getting the word out. So this is maybe one of the first times in this whole Manson situation where I don't actually mind the negative PR, because I think that this stuff is already out there. I mean, people who are following music or who would hear about this have already heard about the accusations. But now, because of the negative PR, they're hearing that Manson's coming back and that there's a tour that he's going to be performing at. So I don't mind the negative PR. But these people, they're going to weather the PR, and they're going to get a big payoff, and they're the bad mainstream media PR. They're going to weather it. They're going to get great ticket sales, and I think in the long run, it's going to be great for Five Finger Death Pact, and even for Slaughter to Prevail, because these are two bands that I had no idea existed, and now I'm almost able to say their names without stumbling. Oh man. All right. So thank you, AJ. My mod AJ. We've got the link here for their summer announcement. By the way, hello to my mods, AJ, Laura B. I'm not sure if the other two are here, Vanessa or Rebel Bird. That's fine if you're not. But anyway, thank you to my mods as always. And by the way, my links are below. I am taking this opportunity as people are turning their attention again to look at the Marilyn Manson situation. And as they realize that the guy certainly has a pulse and that things are going to start happening, I do like to remind people that I appreciate your support, and my PayPal link is below. But anyway, okay, so let's listen to what Eddie Trunk had to say actually about this. So I have an edited version. I have not been able to listen to Eddie Trunk yet, but one of my fans, and thank you for this, Jeff, and Eddie Trunk's fans, one of our fans did an edited cut of it. I don't think he was able to get like everything on one clip or whatever. I don't know, but you kind of get a sense, at least from what I'm about to play. You get a sense of what Eddie Trunk is thinking about the Manson situation. So I'm going to put that up. I've got two clips here, Eddie Trunk, and then we'll talk about it. And there's a weird thing that happens with StreamYard. Y'all know about it, where it kind of turns down the volume on clips that you're playing. So if you can't hear this, you turn it up, and then when it's done, I'll try to come in softly so I'm not blaring at you. Okay? All right.
Hey, Eddie, thank you so much for taking my call. And like always,
sure, Jeff.
You are the patient saint of all.
I'm sorry, can y'all hear that? I'm always a little bit nervous about the technology. So will someone tell me quickly in the comments, can you hear it? By the way, who is Eddie Trunk? Some people might not know. Eddie Trunk has this radio show, podcast about rock music. He interviews all kinds of people in the industry, from performers and to fans to industry executives. Yes, very low. Okay. But anyway, he's a big figure in the music industry. And so he has been following the Manson situation. He's one of the few that I think have been talking about it in the right way in the media, the way that I like. Okay. So yeah, you might need to turn this up. Here we go.
All things hard rock, metal, radio, both terrestrial, Sirius XM, and the man that's going to procure the first interview with Marilyn Manson.
This is my friend Jeff, who called in and raised the issue. So good for you, Jeff.
Kanye, and solid reversed his laptop.
Too funny, Jeff. What's on your mind today, man?
Eddie, I got two quick things. One is Greg Randolph. No, I'm not pronunciating his name right. But
No, that's right.
Okay, so he asked a question. It's about to get cut off. He asked a question about Manson and what Eddie's thinking about Manson stuff. Okay, so I've got it on my page. I'm going to play this. Again, it's edited, but you'll get a sense of it, and then we'll talk about it. If I can get it. Here we go.
Gave you a heads up was going to happen, and that is the return of Marilyn Manson. If you do listen every day, but in today's world, where does this go? What happens? Does he get an opportunity at redemption? Does he get exonerated? Or does he continue to are not worried about blowback for bringing Manson out? Secondly, and maybe even way bigger than that, is that Live Nation, at least as of now, is not worried about. Could there be boycotts, protests? Absolutely. And does Live Nation hold on it? If there is, we don't know. We know he has a new record. Is he just going to put it out himself? We know his record label dropped him because of the allegations. So all of this is extremely fascinating. Whether you're a fan of Manson, no stranger to handling people being super divided on him and dealing with blowback and protests. But this is different because this landed in the leakers, I think.
Okay. So again, sorry, it's that's all I can get is the edited part, but I'm going to try to find it this week and talk about and play the extended conversation. So here's what I see happening, or here's what I see as being the problems that will arise. And again, I'm much more optimistic now. I really think that at times it'll be a bumpy road, but I think that Manson is going to. I think he's going to be able to get at least back what he had before. I'm sorry. I mean, before all of this conspiracy and Evan Rachel Wood and all of that. And I would hope even more, as I've said before, I've talked about this on Instagram. It may sound silly, but especially as someone who's not a fan or didn't start out as a real appreciator of his work necessarily, just because I only knew, the main songs. But I really have a vision for him where I would love for him to be as big as he was in the 90s and as culturally relevant. And I don't know exactly how that would happen, perhaps, or what have you. But I know that where he's at right now, I'm sure that it would be nice just to have a decent career back, and to not be this unemployed pariah that he was initially when this stuff happened or when these allegations came out. But anyway, this is what I think about how things are going to unfold and the challenges that he's going to face going forward and how to maybe get over them. So I think that Evan Rachel Wood is probably going to try to cause some problems, even though I've been surprised at how muted her response has been to this news. I mean, there has been no response. And I do wonder if she is starting to get worn down, even as crazy as she is, if she's starting to get worn down by this whole mess and this that she created. I've been waiting. I have to say, I know she's loony and vindictive and all of that, but I have been waiting for the rational part of Evan Rachel Wood, or at least the self-interested part of Evan Rachel Wood, to wake up to the fact that she does not have to be in this situation if she chooses to get out of it. And I'm talking about the situation like this mess that she has created for herself. And she may have the mainstream media scammed, and there may be certain quarters of society where she feels like this has still been a net gain for her, but really by and large, it has really harmed her tremendously. And I know there are some people, other accounts, anti-Manson accounts that say, well, see, that proves that she's telling the truth because she knew what she was getting into and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, I don't think that she actually knew what she was getting into. I know that Evan Rachel Wood went on that psychology podcast, that really popular psychology podcast. And I've forgotten the name of the woman, but some of you write it in the comments. She went on that podcast. And one of the things that she said in that podcast is that she was well aware when she came forth with her allegations, she was well aware that there was going to be tremendous blowback, that it was going to ruin her reputation. And she's like, I had to make peace with the fact that, my reputation, it was going to be one of the first things to go. I don't for 1 second believe that bullshit, y'all. I just want to tell you, I don't believe that bullshit. I think that because when she came forward, that was really the height of Me Too. It was after Weinstein, but it was before any significant false accusations had been exposed. And also there was the George Floyd stuff that had recently happened. And so there was just a general, much more, and I know people don't like the word, but it's a shorthand. There was much more of a woke atmosphere and a prevailing woke perspective in society at that point. And I think that she thought, and plus, listen, remember, she was getting egged on before she came forward and actually named Manson. She was getting egged on by the prospect of an HBO documentary, a 2-part documentary by Amy, what's her name? And look, let me put it this way. Evan Rachel Wood talked about being abused and sexually assaulted. She talked about it for years before she actually named Manson. And of course, her story has changed too. And I've talked about this. And by the way, Lisa, one of the people that I've done a video with, her name is Lisa. She was the BDSM expert that we talked about some of the allegations of some of these women. But she made an excellent point. And sorry, Lisa, I haven't gotten back to you yet on your text, by the way, FYI. But she made an excellent point in the video that we did together that when Evan Rachel Wood first started talking about being sexually assaulted, she said that she was assaulted by 2 men on different occasions, and one of them was the owner of a local bar. And then we just never got that anymore. That just went away. And then her story on Manson seemed to undergo a big shift when she was talking for so long about how great he was and not controlling it all and blah, 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 blah. And then when she talked about being assaulted by 2 different men, she talked later in the interview about Manson and how, in a really friendly way and everything. So like her story was a mess, but she did not name Manson until years after she brought up this stuff. She didn't name him when she testified before Congress or the California Assembly. And this is what I'm trying to get at here. I think, people will spin it and say, well, she didn't name him because she was afraid of retribution and so forth. But I think what was going on there is that she really knew, and she really knows deep down, that Manson did not do the things to her that he's accused of, and that he was not an abusive boyfriend. And of course, I've interviewed a number of people on my channel. If you're new to this, check out my Manson live stream. A number of people who knew them, were friends with them, living with them at one point, etc., who say that he was not abusive. And of course, again, need I remind you that his ex-wife, his current wife, his ex-fiance, Rose McGowan, Miss Me Too, they have all said that he was not this abusive monster that he's being depicted as. But I digress. I think that Evan Rachel Wood, deep down, she knew that it was wrong. To what extent she knew, like some deep moral, ethical sense, apparently not. But I think on some level, she was uneasy about making this accusation against Manson, and naming him. And that's why she put it off for so long, because she wanted to see how much mileage she could get without doing that. I mean, it's very strategic in a way. Okay, I want to become this big activist. I want to pass laws. I want to be, Amber Heard, but better at that point, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and I've got, my lesbian girlfriend, and she's really into victim stuff, and, she's really, egging me on. And then I've got, et cetera, et cetera. I think that she wanted to see how far she could get with that before she had to name Manson, or not. She didn't want to name Manson. And so that's why you had this progression of behavior and, activism and speeches and talking about her abusers and this shifting story in various interviews. But it got to a point where it was made clear to her, I'm sure, in ways overt or subtle, that HBO and fancy director Miss Amy, that they were not going to give her the kind of mega documentary that she wanted unless she named the big fish, unless she named Manson, because then it becomes a story. Because it's just not, I'm sorry, it's just not in Evan Rachel Wood talking about being assaulted in a general way or by anonymous people or former owners of bars or whatever. That just does not have the interest factor to sustain a 2-hour documentary or, as it turns out, 3.5-hour, 2 parts HBO documentary series. It just doesn't without bringing Marilyn Manson into it. And he was the most convenient target. He looks scary. Everybody thinks he's scary. He said and written a lot of unfortunate shit about himself back when there was a reason to do it, commercially speaking, to reinforce that image. And so he was a great target. And who knows, in her loopy mind, I think that part of her thinks that he deserves what she's done because she was a baby. I was a baby. We met when I was 18. I just learned to walk a few months ago. And he was this predator, this older man. And then we started dating and I was 19 and it's just too young. And she knows that our society is in a particular odd phase right now. And I'm sorry, some of you might not agree with this, but it is in an odd phase right now where an 18-year-old woman would be considered by a number of people, particularly a lot of these feminist activists, as a child. I'm sorry, but a teenager, particularly an older teenager, having sex, underage sex with a guy who's overage, I just will never say that's child abuse. I just won't say it. It might be inappropriate. We could talk about the legality of it. We could talk about what's best or not or whatever, but that is just not what all these people say it is. Some kind of sexual assault. In Evan's case, she was overage. She was 18, mostly 19 when they really started dating. They were really into their relationship. And so here's the thing, though, is that she knows that today, particularly in activist circles, feminist activist circles, that is viewed in a very negative way. So it was just so easy to say the scary guy who says scary things and does scary things on stage and he was dating me and I was just a baby, I was just a teenager. I think in her mind it gave her enough of a license or excuse to go after him. I think with the hesitation that we saw, the tremendous prolonged hesitation, I do think that's evidence of the fact that she wasn't able to, for a while, to psych herself up to do something that ultimately deep down she knows was wrong. But that finally, faced with the prospect of naming him and then having this whole other thing open up for her that she wanted, she was able to, along with Ilma Gore, no doubt, her activist girlfriend, no doubt talking in her ear, she was able to convince herself, well, he might not have done these horrible things I'm accusing him of, tying me up, what was it, electrocuting me with a sex toy, putting meth in my food, or what, I don't even remember whatever all it was, right? He may not have done these things, but he took advantage of me when I was a child. So that gives me license then to do all of this. I really think that's actually what's going on in her head. We have talked about for a while, and sorry, I'll get to your super chats just another minute. We have talked for a while speculating about we, like all of us, speculating what is wrong with this girl, what is her deal. And I think I finally come to the conclusion that, yes, of course, she's nutty. And yes, of course, she's also very manipulative. But I think that what's going on in her head is that she has convinced herself, based on the age disparity, mostly based on that alone. She has convinced herself, based on that age disparity, that was a form of abuse and that therefore, well, he's an abusive guy anyway, so I can just accuse him of these things. Anyway, that's what I think. Okay, let me get to these super chats. And by the way, if you want to send me also on PayPal, if you want to send a donation that way and leave a message, I will say your first name, not your last name, but I'll say your first name and I'll read your message that way as well. PayPal link is below. But I love the super chats. Thank you. Okay. I want to make sure I didn't miss any, and then we're going to look at something. Oh, yeah. Thanks for answering my question way back there, Rio Baby. 5-finger death punch. I don't know. It's not like it's an alliteration or something. It's not a tongue twister. I don't know why it's so hard for me. Lisa, hello, Lisa, says, so happy to catch you live. Thank you. I'm going to talk, by the way, about I've got some things going on here in the background that are relevant that I want to explain. Dan Campbell says, if you're able to weaken those synapses and start watching a slew of cool movies, include Capricorn 1 on the list. I've seen Capricorn 1. I've seen a lot of movies that you may assume I have not seen. And I have seen that one. That's the one where they fake going to, was it the moon or Mars? I can't remember, but O.J. Simpson was in that. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So y'all can all go look that up. Astronaut movie with O.J. Simpson where they fake going to Mars, or was it the moon? But it's good. I like it. That was a good movie. All right. More comments. There's probably an easier way than scrolling. Dan Campbell says, trolling and joking aside, Chris, can you give a quick summary of the Manson situation? I know nothing, just winging it. Oh, you really don't know anything about this? I'll have to look at your message earlier when I asked you when you started following me. That's interesting. I'll give it to you 1 second, okay? Jocelyn says, make that documentary. Oh, Jocelyn, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. The comment and also the donation. Make that documentary. Your support and dedication has been so crucial. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the documentary in a minute. Thank you for that. Stephanie Peace, super sticker. Thank you for that, Stephanie. Okay, 1 second. Check my account, my PayPal, just to make sure I'm not missing anything from anyone. Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. Let me see if you have a comment. No comment, just support. Oh, thank you. And yeah, Dwayne, of course, thank you. Okay. Oh, wait, you do have a message. You said today Kurtz is the female Elton John. Yeah, but you couldn't hear my music, so the intro didn't work. I wish that I could go back and chop off the intro. YouTube has an editing function, but it's very slow. It's kind of hard to use, or maybe if you're stupid like me, it's hard to use, but it's a little bit tricky. And then it's really slow kicking in, but I might go and edit out that intro. But Elton John, you brought up Elton John. You know, there's another song I will say that applies to the Marilyn Manson situation. So hold on a second. I'm going to play it since and I'm playing this also because I read in an interview that one of Marilyn Manson's favorite movies is also one of my favorite movies, Rocket Man. And he and I both share this trait that we both cry during Rocket Man. I'm talking about the Elton John biopic. I think, no offense to the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, but I really do think that the Elton John biopic, Rocket Man, is better. And I do think that Taron Egerton provided a more Oscar-worthy performance than the other guy. What's his name? I'm not trying to disrespect him. I just really don't remember his name. But anyway, check it out. You know, Taron Egerton didn't lip sync either. They mixed, as I understand it, they mixed his voice with Elton John's. Okay, but this for Manson, just a second. And then we get to the chorus. I'm still standing. Yeah. All right. Anyway, seek Rocket Man if you haven't seen it. I really think it's good. So, okay, here's a synopsis of the Marilyn Manson situation, since we do have some people on the thread apparently who don't know about this. That's amazing. All right, so here's a synopsis, okay, is that Marilyn Manson has, throughout his life, it seems, been attracted to an unusually large number of crazy people. And a certain small, tiny percentage of those crazy people have basically come back, like in, you know, A Christmas Carol, the ghosts of Christmas past or whatever, have come back to haunt him. And so what happened is you had a primary accuser, Evan Rachel Wood, who in a very Amber Heard-like fashion wanted to become an activist, a major feminist activist, as she has. and she ended up getting laws passed and speaking before Congress and all of that. She wanted to do that and get her 2-part HBO documentary and just frankly just be involved in the political conversation. You know, she started talking about this, she said, because Trump got elected in 2016. So Shane Cashman brings this up a lot, and I'm really glad that he keeps reminding people of this. This all started because Evan Rachel Wood wanted to take a big public political stand against Trump. And she flat out said that. She said in an interview, I've decided to start talking about my sexual assaults and my experiences, my sexual assaults, because Trump was elected. So she, for years, for a while, she talks anonymously, like I said, anonymously about her experiences. The story changes over time, etc. And then a certain point comes where it becomes clear that she's not going to get any more mileage out of this unless she then names Manson, and it becomes a whole thing then about Manson. The other thing is that she, at the time, was dating an activist named Ilma Gore and an artist. This woman had become famous. Well, not famous. She wishes. But she had achieved some minor notoriety through painting Trump with a micro penis, which I don't know, some of you might find that more amusing than others, but that was her big claim to fame at that point. She started dating Evan Rachel Wood. And so basically, the two of them set up this scheme to recruit willing ex-girlfriends or just, ex hookups or what have you of Marilyn Manson's to join them in all announcing on the same day that they'd been abused. And then some of them would file lawsuits and some of them would give interviews and what have you. But they recruited these women. They actively, and we do have proof of that, actively recruited these women. And I know that from what I have learned, that it was an extensive recruitment process. Like there were multiple steps. It started with an email contact, and then there was a Zoom meeting, and then there was like people personally went there and whatever, right? So she and her girlfriend at the time, Ilma Gore, they recruited these women. And by the way, they recruited them with the help of Manson's disgruntled ex-employee, Ashley Walters, who is also suing him. She's the one with the repressed memories that I talked about earlier. She's the one whose lawyer made that snarky remark about, well, Manson's out of money. Yeah, so he's got to start working again, got to start touring. Anyway, this woman, by the way, I just want to remind those of you who don't know, when she was employed by Manson, she stole his Porsche, took it for a joyride, a drunken joyride without authorization, wrecked the Porsche, and got a DUI. And she admits all of this and even talks about it in her lawsuit. Her excuse is that the trauma of dealing with Manson, of being employed by him and everything he was doing to her, it just made her act out. But yeah, it's in the lawsuit. She admits it. And of course, she went for a joyride with Esme Bianco, one of Manson's other accusers, whom she also helped recruit. Anyway, so this disgruntled ex-employee, ex-assistant, Ashley Walters, she has access to all of Manson's like social media shit and his passwords and past texts on his phone and emails and all of that. And she takes it and she sifts through it or whatever, and she gives the relevant stuff to Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore, and the three of them start actively using that contact information and their knowledge of his histories with women. Not histories in terms of abuse, but just maybe, he broke up with this woman, she's disgruntled or what have you. Anybody who might be able to be talked into the idea that they were abused. And so they recruit these women. And this is something that we know from Ashley Morgan Smithline, one of them who was recruited. She was on the cover of People magazine. She went on The View and gave a disastrous interview with the View ladies and Meghan McCain. And who I think's opinion has as a result of that interview, frankly, was very negative. I've heard. Anyway, that when she was doing that interview, when Meghan was with her, that she was like, "What the fuck?" Basically, this girl, woo, because the way she was acting, And if you've seen the interview, and it turns out she was on ketamine. And I'm not trying to be insulting to Ashley Morgan Smithline, because she was going through some real shit, having been talked into this conspiracy and then being pressured by the other girls, including Evan Rachel Wood, to carry it out on live TV on The View. But anyway, she was like zoned out and stuff. Well, anyway, Ashley Morgan Smithline said that she was recruited by Evan Rachel Wood with a set of very interesting manipulative lies. One of them being that she was probably abused, but she just blocked the memory. She repressed the memory. Now, you might say, well, why would Ashley Smithline go for that? It's so stupid. If someone says to me, "Oh, well, you may not remember the abuse, but you probably blocked it." Well, here's the thing you have to remember is that Evan Rachel Wood was approaching these women, telling them that she herself had undergone tremendous, horrible abuse at Manson's hands. And so, again, this is kind of my feeling on Dan Cleary as well. And this is why I hope that he wakes up at a certain point to this while there's still time. You have to understand how compelling it is to have this attractive, seemingly sweet, fragile woman, Evan Rachel Wood, seemingly very innocent, asserting to you that this man, this older, scary man, did all of these horrible things to her. And so at that point, then it becomes easy to say, well, maybe I don't remember that he did these things to me, or that's not how he was with me, or whatever, but I'm helping this victim. And and I probably am repressing it, because there was that time where we did get into a fight and we were screaming at each other or whatever. So I think it's just very easy to get sucked into something like that. But that's what happened. And so you had a number of these women who recruited, and then they were included in this 2-part HBO series. And a number of them got, like photo spreads, including Ashley Walters as May Bianco, these photo spreads in Rolling Stone and, New York Times and New York Cut magazine, interviews, a number of the accusers got major interviews, a lot of mileage out of it. And remember, these are women who, again, no offense to Smithline, because I really appreciate what she's done, but these were women who at that point were really career failures, and are at the end of a good career, perhaps in Smithline's case, because she'd done a lot of modeling, I know, in Asia and elsewhere. But like the career had stalled out, and so Evan Rachel Wood was able to recruit these women. And what happened, as I've said before, is that once the allegations came out, and pretty much all of them, they published their allegations on Instagram. So like there was that one day in February 3 years ago when most of these allegations were published. At that point, Manson was canceled. There were all these stories about how he'd been abandoned by he was officially dumped by his record label, stories that he'd been abandoned by his manager. He was dumped from all of the TV ventures that he was doing. And like he had been having some success, getting into acting. So all of that went away. I know that he had filmed a TV series, or it was an online, series that they ended up just pulling his episode and so forth. So all of these things happened. And then what then happened over the next 3 years is that some of the allegations fell away. One of them was recanted. Some of the others just kind of went silent, went away. And then a number of them, in my mind, pretty much all of them actually, have been discredited now over the past 3 years in various ways. But of course, the mainstream media, they have not gotten the message. And of course, there are a number of activists and Manson haters who really do believe that he's guilty. And, I look at that. I see that when I look at these anti-Manson accounts online. I think that most of them are genuine. I mean, I think that they really believe that he abused these women and that Evan Rachel Wood is telling the truth. And in all fairness, let me just say this, in all fairness to people who thought that he was guilty at first, or even people who continue to think that he's guilty, seeing these hoaxes, and I've said this before, but seeing these MeToo hoaxes for what they are, it really does require a kind of a shift at times in one's vision. And I liken it to those paintings or those prints, those posters that used to be popular in the late 90s, the 3D images. Do you remember those? And so like for the longest time, when I would look at one of those 3D prints, I could not see the 3D shape. I could not see it. And it kind of made me mad, because those things were really popular back then, and you'd see them in a lot of different places and bookstores, what have you. And so I would just stare and stare, and I was just like, meh. But then there was one time finally where I looked at one and my eyes kind of like relaxed, or kind of unfocused. You have to unfocus your eyes first to be able to see them. And then I saw it. And then from then on, every time I looked at one, I was able to immediately see it, because I knew just how to unfocus my eyes. And so what I'm trying to say here is that the idea that a number of attractive, seemingly at first glance or superficial glance, seemingly credible women would go to these lengths to perpetuate horrible stories about horrible false stories about a man, and would put themselves in the media and so forth doing this. It really is a counterintuitive idea. It is something that people who are honest or people who are not psychologically disturbed just can't understand. And I understand why, because it really isn't until you kind of have that shift of focus where you can actually see, like, wow, this really is a hoax. I mean, this Evan Rachel Wood lady, she really is vindictive and crazy. And and the thing is that it also takes a shift in perspective, but it also takes a willingness to see it. And I do think that there are a number of people on the other side, and anti-Manson accounts and Manson haters, who they don't want to admit that it's possible, because they know that once you admit that it's possible, then it becomes possible in all cases. I'm not saying that all cases are false allegations, but I'm saying that becomes, once you see that this kind of a hoax at this level is possible, or even Amber Heard, what she pulled on Johnny Depp. That's why there's still so many activists and mainstream media people who are upset that Amber Heard lost that trial, and has been discredited in the popular thought among the public. There's so many people in the mainstream media and leftist activists and feminists who are distraught by that, because they know now that Amber Heard's hoax, that's now in everyone's mind, in filtering through other Me Too allegations and other Me Too cases. Well, I can't just believe something because a woman is saying it, even if she's attractive, even if she's seemingly credible, even if she cries, or in Amber Heard's case, fake cries with no real tears. I can't just believe it, because look. And so I think that the Amber Heard thing, it was such a death blow in a lot of ways to the idea of believe all women. And so, the Evan Rachel Wood scheme, this is a hoax that just takes Amber Heard, and then it's just like Amber Heard times 10, the magnitude of this. And so some people can't get their minds around it, and some people don't want to get their minds around it, or even around the possibility. But like I said the other day, we keep seeing this happening over and over. I was talking about the case of the Spice Girl, Jerry, whatever her name, Jerry Horner now, because she married this Formula One boss who works for the Red Bull team, or directs the Red Bull team. I don't know what that stuff is, but Christian Horner, and he was accused for months and months and months of sexually harassing a subordinate. And recently that subordinate was let go, was suspended from Red Bull for dishonesty, because it turns out that it was another Me Too scheme, another Me Too hit job, a false allegation. And she's been discredited. And there are feminists online who are freaking out about it. This is terrible for victims. Well, it's terrible for false accusers. That's true. But anyway, that's what's happened with the Manson situation. Now, there are multiple lawsuits. He was sued by multiple women. No, there have been no criminal charges, and we know that the criminal case has been closed on the part of the cops. It's been moved to the DA, and the DA is just sitting on it because he doesn't want to close it for obvious reasons. But Manson was sued by a number of women. He did settle 2 of those lawsuits, even though he had very compelling evidence against these women. And of course, we know, because in one case, the evidence leaked out. And anyway, Bianca's case, her evidence leaked out, and it turns out to be nothing. It was incriminating to herself, actually. So I know, why she settled. And then Chloe Black settled. Her lawsuit was ridiculous. But Manson settled with these 2 women, or rather, I should say, his insurance company did. And it's not the outcome that I like. I would much prefer him to fight in court. But look, the fighting in court thing, it is mucho expensive. The insurance won't pay for that when you have the option of settling. And you are always taking a big risk, because, as much as I would like to see him with an actual verdict of a jury saying, we looked at these allegations and we think that this man is innocent, at the same time, it is a really big risk, because you get one, this was what a lawyer was telling me, you get one guilty verdict, you get one verdict against you, even in civil court, and there's going to be a lot of people saying, see. But anyway, so he settled these 2 cases, and then he still has 2 outstanding cases of women who are suing him, ridiculous claims. One of them is the repressed memory woman who wrecked his car, the DUI lady. And then he has sued the originators of this hoax, Evan Rachel Wood and Ilma Gore, and some of that suit has fallen away because of the really strict laws in California that are very much in favor of these supposed victims. But he's still got some things winding their way through the court system, so we'll see what happens. But I'm glad that he is not waiting for the legal situation to resolve before jumping in, back into the professional arena and doing music again. So good for him. I think it's a gutsy thing because he could have waited, and he could have waited another year or two, or however long it's going to take for all of this stuff to get resolved and then come out. But no, he's going to go ahead, and in the midst of this, he's going to start fighting, start performing. All right, super chats, and then I'm gonna talk about where I see this all of this going. Rio baby, maybe you could come up with that list of movies for us to watch. Yeah, I would love that. You want a list of my favorite movies? See, I thought that's the kind of stuff that people find really annoying. Let me tell you about my favorite movies, but no, I can tell you. I'll tell you the first two on the list: Apocalypse Now, obviously, Colonel Kurtz, and the second is the movie JFK, which is not actually about JFK, but about the conspiracy to kill JFK. And yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff in it too, but there's also a lot of like really legitimate questions about the JFK assassination. But I just love it. Apart from that, the historical questions, I just love it because I think that it is one of the most brilliant examples of of exceptionally well done artistic cinematography and lighting. I mean, cinematography and editing. And it did win the Oscar for best editing and cinematography, I think. But the way that Oliver Stone takes all of these different images, and his editor takes all of these different images and splices them together and using different styles, and in a very complex 3-hour movie with where he's basically constantly feeding you information, but doing it in an interesting way. I just think it's brilliant. It's one of the most brilliant movies that I've ever seen. And it also prepared me to investigate complex hoaxes later in life. So, other comments. What we got here? What we got? Oh, Jocelyn, you mentioned something about the documentary. I need to come back to that. 1 second. Jocelyn, the interview says the interview you did with ex-girlfriends, friends, and ex-employees really gave everyone insight to Marilyn Manson's true nature. If Evan Rachel Wood saw your coverage, she probably wants to just disappear into the background. Well, I wish that I had that much power. One of the things I obviously I want to get bigger for selfish reasons, just I'm pursuing a career in social media and I'd like to get a lot bigger and have more influence than I have now. But also one of the things that I really wish is that I had a bigger audience. So I really could put the truth out there. And I'm trying, and I went on Tim Pool, and I'm doing other shows and everything. And I know it takes time, but my dream is that I would be able to, sit down and talk to hundreds of thousands of people at once. I did get that though you mentioned Manson's assistant. Shout out to Paula, his good friend and been there all this time, steadfast, and ex-assistant and all of that, who did an interview with me where we talked about Amber Heard, because she met Amber Heard one night, a very crucial night that was then discussed in Amber Heard's witness testimony later. But she met Amber Heard and had a weird experience with her. And so I did a video on that, and it got 1 million views during the Johnny Depp trial. That's always going to be one of my moments of triumph with YouTube, is when that got 1 million views. Of course, YouTube demonetized it very quickly, of course, because it was doing so well, and they probably didn't want anti-Amber vids doing really well. But anyway, long story short, there are a lot of people who have definitely come out for Manson on my channel, and I'm so appreciative. And they did it when it took guts, and that's the thing. At a certain point, I think that this is going to be exposed, this situation, and then there'll be people jumping on the bandwagon saying, yeah, I knew it was BS all along, or whatever. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say to people like Dan Cleary, is that there is a truth that is going to be exposed one way or another. And there is a man, a major cultural icon, who is going to be reintroduced to the public, as it were, and and whose story will eventually be publicized in a widespread way. And at that point, it'll be too late to jump on the bandwagon, because you'll look like the people who are afraid to stand up for him right now, the people who know the truth about Manson and are afraid to stand up right now. There will come a day when all of them will wish that they had stood up for him. And so the way that I would think about it right now is that the period that we're in right now, this is basically like a last call at the bar. When the bartender says, 2 a.m., last call, you want to drink, this is your last opportunity. I really feel like we are nearing the point where standing up for Manson and for the truth will no longer be much of an act of courage. It'll be a no-brainer, but then it won't mean anything because everyone will be doing it. But if you get in before the last call, if you get in at the last call, if you get in now, it still means something. And so, that's what I would say to people who might be realizing that they were suckered, or that they got in on the wrong side. Think about that. Anyway, but I so where was I going with that? She asked about the documentary, and yeah, I'm working on it, and I had an offer actually of someone in the audience. I don't know if I can say your name or not. So Stevie, can I say your name? But someone with a lot of experience in movie making and documentary and the tech stuff that I'm not as good at, who offered to also help me. So, we'll see what comes of that and everything. But there are definitely people behind the scenes who are interested in seeing the real truth get out there, and having a rebuttal to the documentary, the British documentary that's probably going to be coming out on Netflix or HBO Max or whatever. That's going to be a hit job. Probably. I mean, I hope not. I hope not. I hope they'll at least give some time to Manson's perspective. But anyway. So what else? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So this is how I see it playing out. So that Channel 4 documentary, Channel 4 is the company, the British company putting it on. And I think that's where it's going to be aired, probably in Britain. But again, it'll be aired other places in the United States and so forth. I think that's going to be coming out soon. And the reason that I think that is because in certain European markets, some channels are already advertising it. They have not yet given an air date when it's going to be coming out, but they've started advertising it. So to me and some other people I've talked to, that indicates that we could be looking at just a couple of weeks perhaps, or we could be looking at more like a month, but I think it's going to come out soon. And that is a 3-part documentary. And unfortunately, I don't expect it to be fair to Manson. And so that is going to be happening at the same time as we are seeing now this news and the media backlash about Manson touring this summer. And I think those two things together will probably mean that this story is going to get a decent amount of attention. I'm not saying anything like, Johnny Depp or Amber Heard or whatever, but I think it's going to generate some controversy. And so that'll be sort of the first leg of it, is seeing if that catches on or not. In other words, there's a chance that the documentary comes out and it did what the Russell Brand documentary did, which was also by Channel 4, although I think that was just one part. But you remember how that documentary, along with the Times article that came out with it, that really started some shit for Russell Brand. And he got demonetized on YouTube, which is a huge thing. Don't think that Rumble makes up for that, because it doesn't. Okay. Even for someone like Russell Brand, because of that cancellation, his income, I'm sure, went down by, I would say, half, 3/4, my guess. But that was a very impactful documentary coming out at the same time as the articles. It was a very impactful documentary. And I'm not saying that he was totally canceled, because, we still see him on Rumble and we still see him on different platforms and so forth. And is he still on YouTube? He's just not monetized? I don't know. But anyway, he's still trucking along. So good for him. He seems to have somewhat survived to fight another day, right? But that was an impactful documentary. And so my guess would be that the Marilyn Manson documentary, particularly since it's 3 parts, and particularly since the media will already be kind of an activist and so forth, will already be kind of riled up by the fact that he's going to be touring this summer, I think that will be a pretty impactful documentary. I'm not saying it's going to change a ton of minds or whatever, but I'm just saying in terms of kind of restarting this conversation a bit and giving Manson some negative coverage. Now, what I don't know is the extent to which Evan Rachel Wood is going to raise hell. And I really don't think it's in her interest. I really think that she should get the fuck out of this however she can and just move on with her life. But it depends on, how wedded she is to sticking this out and how crazy she's gotten or whatever. But I think that I think there's a big question mark as to how hard she continues to fight this in the public arena. And who knows, Manson has sued her. And I know the defamation stuff was taken out of the lawsuit by the judge because of the stupid California rules, but she's still got a lawsuit hanging over her head. So, I don't know. But if Manson is lucky, then I think she'll stay kind of quiet. But if he's not, then I think she'll raise some hell. And that ultimately I don't think will be good for her. I think it's counterproductive, but I think she'll raise some hell. There's a possibility. How much of a reaction there is to that, I don't know. Does that, like Rammstein, when Rammstein toured this last time in Europe with those stupid allegations hanging over their head, there were protests, but they didn't amount to anything. I wonder if we're going to see much in the way of protests at Manson concerts, at the Manson Five Finger Death Pact concerts, a Death Punch. Just can't get that right. I don't know if we're going to see much in the way of demonstrations, or if it's going to be on the level of the Rammstein demonstrations, where basically you're lucky if you have 100 people there, and they're just like silly girls, doing dances and stuff. To me, that would be a good outcome if that's the extent of it. Worst case scenario, there's some kind of a real outcry that gets ginned up, kind of like what we saw with Columbine, except, could be worse, but a real outcry and expectation of lots of like protests, but also just lots of like haranguing in the media and hand wringing and everything. And that, as Eddie Trunk said, could be an issue for Live Nation, the people putting this tour on and promoting it, and the bureaucracy behind it, right? And so what Eddie Trunk was saying is, there could be a possibility, I hope not, God forbid, there could be a possibility that that Manson could get kind of shut down, or that he could get dropped, or whatever the term is. I think, though, that Live Nation and the people putting this on, all the people behind it, and the bands involved with Manson and everything, I think that they must already be prepared for that. I think that they've probably crossed that issue, crossed that bridge in their mind, and they're prepared for that for a certain extent. So I would be surprised if Manson is not able to stay on this tour. I think he'll be able to stay on this tour, and I think that ultimately it will be a very successful tour. They're going to sell a lot of tickets, because I still think that there are enough Manson fans and people interested in seeing him who will come, who will buy tickets. So I think that once he has this successful tour as an opener, then I think that's going to open up a lot of space for him. And so think about this. I guess the way I want to put this is, and this is no offense to the main band, Five Fingers, but think about this as a trial run, and kind of a sort of a purgatorial way of proving himself to Live Nation, to insurers, to potential collaborators, venues, etc., that, hey, you can have Marilyn Manson on your tour, and there aren't going to be any legal issues. There's not going to be any criminal activity. The shows are all going to go really well. He's going to bring his A game. None of that, drunken, stumbling around stuff. The protests, if they do take place, they're going to be minimal or not that big of a deal, and it's okay. It's a net gain, right? That's the thing. It comes down to, is having Manson on your tour, is that a net gain or a net loss? And so I think that clearly there are a number of people backing this, involved in this, who have done a calculation. They have determined that it's going to be a net gain. Even if they stick it out, they have to stick it out through some bullshit. It's going to be a net gain. And I think once that lesson is learned, he successfully completes this tour, there will then be a lot of people in the industry, and even in these bureaucracies that are normally so scaredy cat, but they'll say, oh, look, he completed it. He made a lot of money. He sold a lot of tickets, helped sell a lot of tickets. It was okay. Okay. Let's have him as the lead this time. I really think that can happen. So it'll be interesting to see. And as I've been saying, and I'm going to have to wind this up. Sorry, because I got to go to work. But as I've been saying, I think that's why it's so important that those of us who are on this and who are supporting him, and just supporting the truth, because again, I didn't come into this as a fan. Don't really consider myself to be a fan. No offense. Sometimes I actually infuriate Manson fans by being sort of kind of nonchalant about the art. Like, yeah, whatever. He put out a new picture and a new song, Tyler Bates. I'm sorry. That's been my attitude at times, but that's been my attitude. But I'm working on a documentary, and that has helped. Actually, working on a documentary about Manson, and partly about his work, that has helped me to gain more appreciation for the art that a lot of you have been touting for a while. Okay. But all of that is to say, though, that it is important, I think, for a number of us to keep getting the truth out there. And so I just want to mention again, I forgot to mention Stand By Your Manson last time, and I'm sorry. Stand By Your Manson, they have been OGs here from the beginning. They just had their 3rd year anniversary covering this situation. They're on Instagram and on Twitter, I think, mostly on Instagram. Check them out. Stand By Your Manson. Marilyn Manson Uncanceled, the Manson cases, Justice for Manson, and Truth for Manson. I also forgot you last time. Sorry. Truth for Manson. And I mean, there's just a bunch of other people, and, Leslie Lane's been around forever, and et cetera, et cetera. A ton of other people, Manson and Paula, all of you. Great. One more thing. I said I was going to say something about props. So I have a prop. It's really not that interesting of a cat. prop. I really would like to get something better. Oh, there's a noise. I really would like to get something better. So I'm going to try to get a better cat prop that's more interesting than this. This is kind of a little too like, homespun, see this in your mom's kitchen or whatever, kind of boring. But I want to get an interesting cat figure because going forward, the theme or the motif, I should say, the English teacher coming out, the motif for my Manson coverage, one of the motifs is going to be the 9 Lives cat. Manson, a known cat lover, but he is, and perhaps married to a feline. He loves all things feline, it seems like, right? And so I think that is the perfect symbol for him because, like the feline, he has had multiple lives. And they thought that they buried him after Columbine. And I mean, there's been like several things along the way. The censors were trying to get at him. For a while, it was the Republicans who were trying to get at him. Now it's kind of switched. But anyway, lots of people have been after him. And now we've got the MeToo activists and the media after him. But like the cat, not the phoenix rising from the ashes, by the way, but like the cat with 9 lives, I think Manson, he has at least another life to go, another round to go, hopefully a few more. So I celebrate the latest incarnation of Marilyn Manson that will be going on tour with Five Finger Death Punch. And I propose the cat as a symbol. I said motif, a symbol. There's a whole English teacher lesson in that. Theme versus motif versus symbol, and then allegory too. Those are all confusing. They've always been confusing for me, even when I teach them. But anyway, point is, potent symbol here, relevant, meaningful symbol of Manson's reemergence and his persistence under persecution. So, and with that, I'm going to take us out with a song. Goodbye, everybody. Check out my links below. Support appreciated. More to come. Love you all. Bye-bye. Oh, Missy Jade. Here at the end, epilogue. Sorry, epilogue, everyone. I've not seen you in forever, Missy Jade. So she says, hey, girl, and chat, it's been so long. I'm in a hospital trying to get decent service on my phone. LOL. I'm very close to being in remission. Yay, sending love and hugs. Look, I want everybody to know this has been one of my, over the years, one of my most faithful supporters and also faithful supporter for Johnny Depp, Marilyn Manson. And I should have inquired about your health a long time ago because I knew last time we talked that you were struggling. And so I pray, and we all pray for a full remission for you. And we love you. And so may you as well have another life. Anybody else? I think that is it for my super chats. So y'all, thank you for everything. Send prayers Missy Jade's way. I love you all. Thank you to my mods and to Marilyn Manson. Good luck, sir. Bye-bye.